is such a thing as too liberal, apparently.
So, Rebecca, one of the things you said that struck me was talking about how you needed that as sort of a thing to work toward moving toward the inauguration. And so I'm the knitting one for a reason. I was knitting pussy hats like crazy. I knit, I think, 35 of them before the march, and then
Oh my God.
a whole bunch more. I just finished one an hour ago. Haven't stopped. But it definitely helped me. Like, I don't know if I would have made it between November 8th and January 20th otherwise. Like, knowing that the Women's March was coming, knowing that I had this purpose, I was knitting these hats for people all over the country, that made such a huge difference in my ability to cope. I remember the day of the inauguration thinking like, oh my gosh, we're actually here. Like, I'd forgotten that part was still coming. I don't know how. I haven't been able to. And I think in a tiny way, as wonderful as the Women's March was, it was kind of a letdown for me when it was over because I didn't have that thing to look forward to. I was immediately like, okay, when's the next march? When's the next thing what can I do next? And so it was good that then Indivisible got on my radar because that gave me another channel for my rage.
Right. It's a good segue, Kelly.
Very good.
Yeah. So, both of you, of course, are involved in Indivisible Oregon, and I'm very involved in Indivisible Chicago on the South Side chapter. So maybe we can talk a little bit about what Indivisible is and why we got involved and how that is sort of one of the bright spots of 2017.
Yeah, it is a bright spot. I mean, that's how Megan and I met. We didn't know each other a year ago. We met through Indivisible. A bunch of different Indivisible groups popped up in Portland and in Oregon. And I happened to be part of one that became Indivisible Oregon. And Megan came to one of our early meetings, like our second or third meeting in probably February. We started in January.
February 9th, I believe.
Okay. And that's how we met, and that's how we met Smitha. And
in this office that we're sitting in right now.
Very room we're sitting in. That's right. Yeah. But just, like I think having a focus, having something to do, having somewhere to direct your whatever the emotion du jour is, having some place to put that and feel like you're doing something instead of just flailing and worrying. I know personally that's what it's given me. I don't want to speak for you guys.
Well, and Rebecca was one of the founding members. You were in the room on the 1st of January?
January 1st, yeah. Yeah, there were like 6 of us in a living room because I'm very involved with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense. And so a lot of the activists in that group, stayed in touch about all of this. And one of them had found the Invisible Guide and said, hey, you guys, this looks like a really viable plan. Who wants to explore this? Let's get together. And so 6 of us got together, on New Year's Day and started kind of hashing out a plan. We each sort of took a task. So one person, started delving into policy, and I started setting up our social media, and somebody else started setting up events, and it went from there, and it really took off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed the first meeting of Indivisible Chicago South Side. They had a meeting, and I sort of vaguely knew about it, but I think I was busy that night or something. Too bad too, because that one was in a bar. But but I missed that one somehow. And then the next time they had a meeting, it was a day I could go, and I dragged along a couple of other friends. It's called Chicago South Side, but South Side is a really big region. Really, it's more kind of the neighborhood around the University of Chicago. And at that meeting, they said, we need someone to run our Facebook page. And I was like, hey, there's a thing I know how to do. I can use my talents for something. And another one of the friends I had dragged along has since become one of the co-leaders of the group. So I'm sure she's grateful I dragged her along. But yeah, it's been really good to sort of have a focus. In the Chicago group, we sort of the umbrella Chicago group sends out an email every single day, every single weekday, with 5 actions you can do, or 3 actions or something you can do today. Like, here are the things we're calling our representatives about today. Here's a petition you can go sign. Here's, some other action. Here's a march we're going to have. And it's really good to sort of have that really focused attention on, like, here's what we're accomplishing. We're not going to try to change everything all in one day. We're going to try to do this today. And it can be really effective. One of the things that the Chicago group is working on is the cross-check program that's run by Chris Kobach out of Kansas.
I don't know the buzz. I don't know what cross-check is.
Well, we happen to have an all about it.
Oh, I'll look into it.
I haven't been able to get a straight answer on whether Oregon uses cross-check or not, but we should back up and talk about what cross-check is.
Yeah, so cross-check, and this is sort of one of the things that does not come out of 2017, but is sort of a good thing that 2017 is making it more obvious that it's going on. So this is a number of states, I think it's 27 states right now, all share voter data to make sure that people aren't registered in more than one place. In theory, okay idea. In practice, it's terrible. It's like this easily hackable server where they put all this voter data, which includes first name, middle name, last name, birth date, last 4 digits of your social security number, all this data that should not be shared in this way. They're like emailing out the passwords to these different states.
Oh, God.
Well, and on Oregon, I know Oregon, this is one thing that it bothers me. So if you go to the Oregon DMV website, all I need is your last name and your birthday, and I can see all your voter registration stuff, and I can change it.
What?
Yep.
Whoa.
Holy shit.
So yeah, and that's all you need. You don't need like a password or anything. You just need.
Wow.
I can look it up through my last name, anyone's last name, if I can get your birthday on something, and it would literally take, 100 lines of code to just be able to pull that off.
Oh my God.
Like so. There's something to look into, Oregon.
I am looking at the End Crosscheck website, and according to this, Oregon joined Crosscheck in 2013 and then left in 2014. So they must have realized it was a terrible thing.
Because we have a really snaky, shitty Republican Secretary of State who I don't trust at all. He's terrible, and he's been wily about what he's doing with election law. So,
and he won because I looked up the vote because they're like, why? How could this Republican crazy guy get elected in Oregon when we have a Democratic governor, state legislature? And it's because we had two third-party candidates, like we had a Libertarian and a Green Party person, and so he won by like 2 points.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, he's awful.
Yeah, if we want to talk about 2016, we can talk about what Libertarians and Green Party can do to your election. But we're focusing on 2017.
Yeah, so you guys have been really active on Crosscheck. I've seen some of that online. So what have you been able to get done there?
So the Indivisible Chicago group has requested FOIA records from like all of the states, and it is partly their group and partly another woman who we talked to on a previous episode who's in Kansas. And they have been the ones who've discovered most of this about, like how easily hackable all of this stuff is and how terrible some of it is that like when they run these cross checks, the different states run the data across, they've got all of these points of data, but they just use like first name, last name, and that's it. And who cares that we know your middle names are different? Like, in some cases, they like kick everybody off the voter rolls in both states because these names matched. And you might get something in the mail that says in tiny letters like you've got to re-register, but you're probably not paying attention to it, and so it's really terrible. So they've done all this work with FOIA requests. They've gone to the State Board of Elections in Illinois and gotten hearings. They haven't yet managed to convince Illinois to get out of it. That's still TBD. But they've at least gotten a lot of attention on the issue. And now the senators, of course, we have two fantastic Democratic senators in Illinois, and they are aware of the issue now and are urging Illinois to pull out of Crosscheck. They got Wired.com to write an article about it. So the Indivisible Chicago branch has been able to actually, in addition to a lot of other work they've been doing with protests and things like that, they've been able to get some real attention on this issue.
That's great, yeah. What about you, Sophie? What's going on in Wisconsin?
Not a lot. Wisconsin is actually not in cross-check, which is the only good thing that we've done in terms of voter registration, because we have a pretty terrible law right now that says you have to use voter ID. But yeah, I'm actually not, I haven't been to the meetings for Indivisible in a couple of months, so I'm not sure what we're up to, but I'm gonna head back there next month. We've been doing some marches. I went to a really great protest outside of Paul Ryan's office.
Nice.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the great part about living in Wisconsin. I mean, there are so many great things about living in Wisconsin, but one of them is that you can just drive for 45 minutes and be at Paul Ryan's office and stand outside of his office for an hour yelling at him.
Which is funny because he has never been here.
Right.
Oh my God. My my friend from work, the one who made my sign for the Women's March, she made my sign for this protest as well. It said maybe the GOP should have extreme vetted Donald Trump. And her sign just said, Paul Ryan, answer your phone.
Yeah, he turns them off.
He refused to answer his phone for like most of the year. But it was a really great protest. There's some really great like protest work going on in Janesville, which is where his office is there. Yeah, so Wisconsin is not a huge fan of the Trump administration right now, although unfortunately we contributed to his win in the Electoral College. I don't know that would be repeated in another year.
That's encouraging.
If you want to know what's going on in Wisconsin politics, you should listen to our episode next week on Wisconsin politics.
You should. We're going to be talking to many people in Wisconsin.
You guys, this feels set up.
You brought it up.
Is Scott Walker up for election next year in 2018?
Some people are saying he might not run. He is up, but we have like 1 million Democratic candidates going right now in the state, and really good Democratic candidates. But we have some really solid candidates for governor here in Wisconsin for the Democratic Party. So yeah, actually Wisconsin is an interesting state because it's sort of historically been very progressive, and right now it's sort of torn. I think it's kind of a microcosm of the rest of the country. The really rural parts are very conservative, but Madison and the larger cities are very liberal and have this really long-standing tradition of liberalism and activism. So I think the 2016 election was kind of a wake-up call to a lot of people in Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin is going to be doing some good things in the next year. I have a lot of hope.
Okay, we're going to hold you to that.
Definitely. If they don't do it on their own, I'll make them.
All right, it's all on you. No pressure.
I mean, I gotta say, Paul Ryan's office is not that far from Chicago. So if every Chicagoan just committed to going up every single weekend working on the Democratic campaign.
And, you know, Janesville is a lovely place. Milwaukee is a lovely place. Like, there are lots of great places to protest Paul Ryan and his terrible, poor people-hating agenda.
I'm in.
So...
Yeah, he was here in Portland this summer doing a fundraiser, and Megan went to the protest. I had to sit it out because it was my daughter's birthday, and her one wish for her birthday was no politics. And I was like, oh, you're killing me. But I think you guys had a pretty good turnout.
We did. Yeah, we did. It was like a Tuesday afternoon, and Paul Ryan came, which was interesting because we have one Republican in our U.S. delegation for Oregon. Usually it's a pretty safe seat. Randomly, Paul Ryan comes out, the Speaker of the House comes out to fundraise for an Oregon House of, like, U.S. rep.
In Portland, this rep is not based in Portland and is constantly bashing on Portland.
Liberal agitators.
Right, but then he comes here to raise money, of course.
I mean, that happens in Wisconsin all the time, where Scott Walker constantly talks about, we don't need Madison politics, blah, blah, blah. Well, you work in Madison because it's the state capital, Dick. Like, come on.
It's just like Texas, right? Austin. That's where all you assholes work.
Yeah, exactly. That's where, like, you know, the jobs and stuff are, so.
Right. That's the economic engine.
See, at least in Illinois, when we complain about Springfield, that's not where the economic engine is.
Yeah, true. Same in Oregon. But you guys have Rauner, who's also terrible. Is he up for election next year?
He most certainly is. It would take, I don't know, an act of, it must not be God, but something terrible to happen for him to win. He is wildly unpopular. He's way less popular than Trump.
That's been happening. They were just talking about Ted Cruz. Crooked media, pay us, jerks. Positive America, about how, like, he's reviled and his approval ratings are lower than Trump.
Good.
So
yeah, I would love to see go down.
Rauner is terrible, and I do not expect him to win again. There are some good Democrats running, and I think a big part of what happened in Illinois is just nobody was paying attention, and nobody voted in the gubernatorial race, and they are now paying attention.
I remember when he first ran because he ran this ad campaign with his Volkswagen van. Do you guys remember that? We have, my husband and I have the exact same van in the same color. And everybody started sending us these ads. It's just like, it's a teal Volkswagen bus. Like, and everybody started sending us these ads. Did you guys see this? This guy's using your van in his ads. And lo and behold, he turned out to be a Koch brothers stooge.
And that there are more than
more than one Caribbean blue Volkswagen Eurovan.
Rebecca, are you hiding from us that you're a billionaire?